Okay, so Genesis 2. The way I'll do this, I guess, is to read from the number, which will have some overlap with the actual sort of story, the way NIV separates it into um, sort of groupings of stories that may have been different tellings of the same general story that were edited together later, because there are contradictions between Genesis 1 and 2, as we'll see. Anyway, 2, concluding from what we read in the last one. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing, and so on the seventh day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. Now, on that note, so the seventh day being Saturday, in the original lunar week, Saturday being the day of rest that the Jews take, the Sabbath. I don't see how Constantine just said, "Oh, well, we'll change it to Sunday," and that doesn't make sense to me. For all the Catholics claiming that their authority comes from the rabbinical councils and so forth, where does it say that, oh, let's just change the Sabbath to Sunday? As we'll see later in Kings and so forth, when they found the book of the law, they read it on the first day of the week at the temple, which was Sunday, which became church. That's not the Sabbath. Different days. Anyhow, Adam and Eve. This is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created, when the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Now no shrub had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no one to work the ground. But streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. Then the Lord formed a man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. The Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Wait a minute. In Genesis 1, didn't it say that uh, the waters came first and then the earth? And that the vegetation, no, the waters came first and then the sky, and then the earth, and then the plants, and then the animals, and then man. But in Genesis 2, it says there were no plants on the earth, and there was only the earth, and there was no water, and the water came up out of the earth, and then God made man, and then he made the plants, and then he made the animals in the next verse here. So, all those people who are telling you to take this literal as the literal truth are literally insane for thinking that you can take two statements like this and say that both of them are true, that the particular order of when things were created exactly in this time, and if you don't believe that, you're wrong, and I'm better than you, and you'd better pray to what I say is God, which is actually my ego. That's what they say. No, that's not the way it works. In fact, the word is something more than just literal facts. This isn't a textbook. This isn't an encyclopedia. It's a giant poem. It's a giant anthology of beautiful things that people wrote. And to use this as a way to make people less than, to be able to say, oh, well, I've got this all worked out, and you'd better believe that it's this way because that's the Lord's truth, and if you don't like it, you can just suck my ass. That's just, I hate those people. I really can't stand watching them or listening to them. And it makes me sad. It makes me really sad that they don't just see this obvious This is a contradiction. You can't believe both of these things are literally true, but that's not the point. That doesn't mean that this doesn't have meaning. It just means that it means something more complex than the literal words on the page. That it's something that works in you, that it works you. You don't control it. These people who say you've got to believe this is literally true are trying to control the word to use for their own ends. That's not what the word actually is. The word is a living force that lives up here and over here and breathes life into all of the ideas and helps to organize them in a framework of history and spirit and direction. Okay? But it's, if somebody's trying to tell you that, well, you have to believe that both these things are literally true, but they both contradict, that's a cult. That's, if you can get somebody to believe those things, then you've got them on the hook, and they'll do anything for you. And that's misusing the word. That's not letting the word use you. That's trying to use the word to use someone else, and that's an entirely different thing. I don't know why people can't see that. It's really kind of frustrating. Oh, and the other thing here, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's not just a tree of knowledge. Like some people will say, oh, knowledge is bad. You ate from the tree of knowledge. You must be bad. You know things. Oh, you smart. You bad. Give me a break. That's not what this is saying again. Again, it's more complex than that. It's more subtle. It's that Adam was innocent. He didn't know evil. He didn't know that there was such a thing as evil. He just was like, hey, it's good, man. I'm good. These plants are good. I'm having a good time. Hey, God's good. What else is there? But what the story unfolds as is that the tree of knowledge of good and evil represents that, oh, not only just, oh, now I know things are evil. No, it's not the tree of moral judgment. That was just natural to Adam before anything happened. It's the tree of knowing what is evil and then doing it, I guess, as it unfolds in humanity's history. And I've heard it said, like, for whatever, when they call things a disease, a family disease of alcoholism, if you've ever heard that in Al-Anon or whatever, but if it's more than that, it's not just the booze, it's something else. It's cruelty, it's shame, it's self-destruction, it's sin. What is that disease that you can catch through a phone call? Where does it come from? Who's patient zero? Where's the origin of this disease? Who was the first victim? And I think that's what Adam symbolizes, is he was patient zero of sin. But before that, he wasn't. He was just a dude. And the Lord God took the man. Oh, a river watering the garden of Eden. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. From there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is the Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. Aromatic resin and onyx are also there. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is the Tigris. It runs along the east side of the Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. So we're talking general vicinity of the Middle East. One of these is probably the Nile or something. It's just like in that area. It's funny that it's not so nice now. It's all kind of difficult to grow. It's desert. It's the withered fig. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. Again, not to spoil it and extract everything from it and leave it barren. You know, grow up. All these people running around. Ooh, I'm gonna frack all the oil. I'm gonna drive a big truck that gets 2 miles a gallon, and I'm a Christian. Ah, screw you. You know, screw you. Everybody's doing the best we can. We're trying to do the things we got to do, but and it's not bad to take a day trip once in a while, because I think the future is full of hope for fusion energy, actually. But that's such a crappy attitude. That's not at all what God was saying. God said, literally, am I committing the sin of which I accuse? Maybe. But he says, it says here, took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. You don't work a garden by ripping out all the trees or the plants. You work a garden by tending to things very gently, doing what you need to do to remove pests, but by cultivating. And that's entirely different from the kind of strip mining approach that modern industry takes to the earth. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die." Now the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Now this kind of begs the question, why did God create man at all? I mean, why bother? But it did say, no, it hasn't said in God's image yet. That's in a different part. But so why? I mean, why would God create man? And I think that's because God was lonely. I mean, sort of by definition, being infinite, one can't create another thing because it would separate and be a separate existence instead, and then you wouldn't get to talk to it with it. It would have to be within God, within God's image, and in God's image. And something about image being visualization, I don't know, reflection. We can have a conversation. Like, I can't have a conversation with a rock. God probably was like, "Oh, here's a fish." If anybody of you ever have had a fish, you can look at the fish and you can say, "Hey, fishy, hey, you want some food?" And the fishy comes up to the top of the tank and goes, "Bop, bop, 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 bop," and he wants some food because he wants to replicate his proteins, and he's just a little cluster of neurons that serves no purpose other than to replicate his proteins, apparently. But, it's pretty and has a few little adaptations that it's developed to look pretty and get the humans to keep it in a tank or attract its mates in the wild or whatever, or I have a dog and, somewhat more complex organism, but I can't have conversations about philosophy with my dog. There are limits to the conversations that I can have with my dog. We talk about snacks and critters and going on the trail, and, I hope to train my dog to do a useful job, but I can't really, the dog's fun, certainly a bright spot in my life, but the dog's not a companion, in the sense of another human being, of being somebody I can have a friendship with. And I think that's why God created Adam in the beginning, why God created a human, out of whatever stock we were created from, primates mostly, I suppose, since we do resemble them in very large degree, but we have something a little more than that. For one thing, we have the Word, and the Word is alive in us. Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the wild animals and all the birds in the sky. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them, and whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. So the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds in the sky, and all the wild animals. So there we have words. Man being a vessel for word, meaning intention, association, and this word, as we have more words, takes upon a life of its own and becomes more than what it was, and starts to, you'd call it in computer science, bootstrap an emergent property of consciousness that you can't have without a whole bunch of words. But God was lonely, created man, but also saw, I think, that same problem that Adam was having by himself with all these animals, that he was lonely. God can't have an equal. So, in a way, it's all God's fault, because God tried to create somebody he could have a peer relationship with, but can't create an equal. Tried it with the angels earlier, it's said, and also failed there. He can't have an equal, but he tried. I mean, and what a lot of burden to bear, to have to be God's friend. I mean, the creator of the universe, and like, it's on me to like take care of his emotions when he has a bad day. I'm like, that's a big ton of bricks to put on me, God. Changes in here, but I think that's the way it started, actually. Adam's like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm still lonely because I can't be as good as God, so I must be alone. And God saw that and was like, shoot, I better make him a friend of his own that's a buddy. But for Adam no suitable helper was found, so the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. So, really, it's just like, I've heard it say, well, he's taken a rib, so that means women are inferior. No, it means women are just the same as him, because they're made from a part of him. So, really, it's a metaphor for equality. But the thing is, now, that God has already made Adam beneath him of necessity. So, Adam looks to God for an example of how to treat other people, other creatures, other consciousness. He's already made all these inferior animals to Adam. So Adam then gets this woman who's really his equal. And here's the unique thing that God created is equals. And Adam can't handle it. Adam can't handle it because he has no example in the universe of what it means to be an equal. Not with God, not with the animals, not with the plants or the dirt or whatever. He has no example. He has no reference point. This is something that has never existed before, is an equal. And that was what God wanted in original, I think, was an equal for himself to talk to be friends with. He couldn't have that, so he was like, shoot, I can't have that actually because I'm God and no one can be my equal. Well, I created this Adam guy. I'll give him a gift. I'll give him an equal. And that'll be good for him because he's good and he deserves to have the friendship that I can't have because I'm God. I think that's what God was saying, that Adam deserves to have the friendship that God couldn't have because he's God. and can't have an equal. So he creates an equal for Adam. And what does Adam do with it? Well, he fucks it up. The man said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame." Again, equality. Absolute equality. They're the same. That's why in the original intent, as it's said here, God intended to make man and woman equals, and that their partnerships should be equal, and that they should be one. And it's only later, after the fall, in the next chapter, that it all goes to hell. But, you know, it's a nice thought, you know. I mean, I think he meant well. But by his nature as God, he was kind of bound to make something that would get screwed up. Isn't that weird? I think that's a funny way of looking at it personally. But it seems to sort of line up with what the story is trying to tell us about humanity and what we are and why we're so messed up and what we could have been had we just followed the plan. Hey, that's all for now.